Okay, so I figured I would just make as quick as possible a tutorial for how I configure my vanilla Arch install. So this is post installation, of course. And if you guys are ever interested in seeing an actual Arch install tutorial, the way that I do it in a virtual machine, then be sure to leave that in the comments down below. Or let me know in the Discord, which will be in the description, of course, of the video. So it's not super complicated, but I've tried to document this in a step-by-step manner so people could easily follow it and configure Arch easily. But I'll tell you from memory as much as I can remember from my Arch install, and then we will show in real time how I actually configure the system. And most of this is literally just copy paste the command on the terminal. You're good to go. But of course, this video is more to represent what each command does. So first and foremost, for me, the mainline kernel in Vanilla Arch has a terrible freeze. Lasts for about a second once every few minutes, makes the computer experience unusable, especially when I'm like watching videos or playing games, streaming, so on and so forth. So I recently switched to the Zen kernel, and as in recently, I mean last night. And issues are totally gone. System's running beautifully. So very happy with that. So first and foremost, we do btrfs as our file system. We use the best default partition layout with btrfs compression enabled in the default btrfs structure for the subvolumes. We use snapper as our btrfs snapshot utility. Swap on zram is enabled. We use grub as our bootloader. I use the Zen kernel, and I do not install any other kernel. And other than that, we configure Bluetooth. We set audio to pipewire. Power management is set to tuned. Network manager is the default backend because IWD actually breaks the Arch install script at the current moment, unfortunately. And I'm trying to think other than like, of course, our main system locale is English, UTF-8. Got United States as our main, I guess, call it repo for this instance. I forget. No, mirror. I almost forgot. At a total brain death there. So United States is the mirror for me, of course, because I live in the USA. And then multi-lib is our optional repository. And for profile, we use KDE Plasma as our desktop environment with the NVIDIA Open Kernel Module driver, because I have a NVIDIA card that supports that. So that's our graphics driver, and then we use STDM as our greeter. But as you'll see in this config, STDM is going to go bye-bye really quick. So you select all your options, you install, bam, you're greeted with an Arch install. That is completed. You log into your system. First and foremost, before I do literally anything, I will open a terminal. I will run this command right here: sudo snapper -c root create -d and quotations post clean install snapshot. Now what that does is it uses snapper to create a snapshot of my root drive, partition, however you want to call it, my root directory, the important stuff where all the system files are contained, which I can always roll back to in the future if I need to. Now, Arch is one of those distros where I feel uncomfortable not having restore points. So a lot of this setup is actually just getting decent restore point config. Second of that, I remove home from snapper, so sudo snapper -c home delete -config. Remember, it just literally running these commands in the terminal. And I do that because I don't want to back up my home folder. There's no reason to for me personally, but you can leave that if you want to. Sudo systemctl enable --now grub-btrfsd, and what that does is allows the system to automatically add restore points to grub, which is great, automates the process. And swap on zram is enabled in Arch install by default. So what I do is I edit that configuration. So sudo nano etc systemd zram-generator.conf, and I just add zram-size equals RAM. So out of the box for me, it's 8 gigabytes, but I have 16 gigs. So I just type RAM there and replace the 7,000 megabytes, whatever it is, that zram pre-configures. And I add swap -priority equals 60 at the bottom, and then Control X, Y, enter. So I'll go ahead and show you in real time. Probably going to be difficult to see, and I do apologize for that. Minimize this. I will just cat that file. So etc systemd zram-generator.conf. As you can see, there's a dash between zram and generator, and that is my config. So once we do that, the next step that I take is sudo systemctl daemon-reload, and then sudo systemctl restart systemd -zram -setup at zram0.service. And what this does is, without forcing the user to reboot, it starts the zram service and puts it into effect, which is very nice. And last but not least, we sudo grub-make-config-o/boot/grub/grub.cfg, and that updates grub for all the changes that we just made. Now, command number 1, as denoted here, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, creates a snapshot of our root. Command 2 deletes home from snapper. Command 3 enables auto grub update for snapshots, and command 4 updates grub for finalization. Next, what I like to do is sudo pacman-S assistant, which is basically a front end for Snapper, a graphical user interface, of course, for managing Snapper. That's about the best way I could think to explain it. And now I will install and configure the AUR. Paru, that's my preferred way of interacting with the AUR now. I used EA up until literally like 3 days ago, and I really like Paru. So what I like to do is to change directory into my downloads folder, so cd into downloads, because in my terminal, and I'm sure yours as well, it puts you in your home user directory automatically when you open it. And I will sudo pacman-S --needed space base -devil space git, and that will install the dependencies that we need to actually install, git clone, configure Paru so that we can access the AUR, which I only use for a handful of packages, and that would be my recommendation. Don't use the AUR unless you need to. And if you are going to use the AUR, make sure that you try to vet the packages that you're installing, look at reviews, get a front end like Octopi, something like that. So we would git clone https://aur.archlinux.org/paru.git. Once that git clone completes, we would cd into that paru directory and run the command makepkg space -si. You'll have to put in your sudo or password a few times probably. Once that finishes, you now have the ability through Paru to install applications from the AUR. So then I'll type cd space ... to go back to my downloads directory out of the Paru folder, and I will run sudo rm-rf paru, of course with spaces. And that will delete the Paru folder that we just temporarily needed to actually install the app, because once you actually compile the application from the AUR or whatever your installation method is, whether it's a bin file or whatever, you don't technically need those folders because the software is located elsewhere in your system. So it's kind of like having a backup of a game from GOG, installing it, and the game files are actually somewhere different than the installs files. Okay. So now what I like to do is paru-s snapper-support. And what this does is it will allow Snapper to automatically snapshot anytime I run a system-related command, whether that's through Pacman or through Paru, and it will automatically create a restore point. I like to do this as early as possible, of course. This is why we always immediately create a post clean install snapshot. That way you just have a really clean slate to revert back to if you need to. But thanks to Snapper support through Paru, you're going to have a bunch of other restore points. And not to mention the fact that BTRFS Assistant will take timeline snapshots anyway, consistently. And BTRFS snapshots are instantaneous, and they don't take up nearly as much space as ext4 snapshots, which is awesome. So next thing I like to do, I have a nerd font that I like to install in my system. So I've actually got it on this old crusty hard drive here, backups, fonts, and what I've been using is Departure Mono. So what you would do is go to your home directory, click this little button here, show hidden files, whatever that is, the equivalent of the D that you're using, and you would go into your .local folder, share, and then you would create a directory called fonts. So for me, that'd be home noviewers.local share fonts, and then I would extract that zip for the nerd font that I use, which is only necessary because I'm using Starship, into that directory. And then what I would do is close my terminal, restart it. I would open it, edit my current profile, go to appearance, and I would choose my font here. So Departure Mono Nerd Font. And once we do that, we sudo pacman-S fish, and we run the fish command, and that is the shell that I'm in currently, as you can see. And from there, I like to sudo pacman-S fast fetch. Or actually, no, I just skipped a step, my bad. So curl-s https:// starship.rs/install.sh space pipe space sh. That's a mouthful. What that'll do is install Starfish, which this might not be necessary for you, but I prefer to do it. I like the way it looks. And then I will do the Starship preset no empty icons -o /line /.config dash Golly, I'm tired. /starship.toml. Hopefully, you guys can actually see this on the video. I certainly hope so. um, and that is just a preset, as you can see. We don't have any extra information here that we don't need, and I prefer it that way, and that is thanks to that preset. So from there, I like to fast fetch install through sudo pacman-S fast fetch, and then I run the command fast fetch --gen-config, which will create a config for fast fetch that we can edit. And we would sudo nano home user.config fast fetch config.json, as you can see here. And I would remove the entry for local IP. I just prefer to have it that way, but that's also optional, of course. Sudo pacman-S NVTop I use personally because I have a hybrid GPU laptop where I run my games on the NVIDIA GPU. So NVTop is very useful for monitoring which apps are running on which GPU. And from there, I sudo nano home user.config fish config.fish. And I basically add my aliases and customizations to fish. So set -U fish underscore greeting. I love Jesus. What can I say? That's my greeting. Starship init fish type source. This allows fish to launch Starship when you load into fish, which you want if you want to use Starship. I'm going to have fast fetch here, just the command, because fish will just go down the line and execute apps that you add here and or recognize your customizations to aliases. And that's how we get fast fetch to load when we launch our terminal. And from there, I have an alias for listing. So L equals, in quotations, ls space -w1. So that lists in long view without all the file permissions that I don't care to see. And of course, you can still type ls if you want to, or ls L, as you can see. I know people think my terminal is disgusting. I'm sorry. I know it's kind of hard to read. Alias b equals btop. C is for clear, F is for fast fetch, E is to exit, R is to reboot, FU is for flatpak update, FL is for flatpak list -A, so listing your flatpaks that are installed. NS is for NVIDIA SMI, WS is for watch NVIDIA SMI, NV is for NVTop, PS is for Paru, which is just a command to update the system and your Paru packages also. And then RK is to restart KDE, so systemctl --user restart plasma shell. Sometimes KDE will mess up, and restarting it is very nice. So the last alias will be mg for sudo grub-mkconfig -o boot grub.cfg, as you can see here, because sometimes it is necessary to manually update grub. Now from there, what we would do is we would source that config.fish that we edited and added all that content to. So of course, if you're using Nano, which is what I recommend, you would Control X, Y to accept the changes, and then Enter to write the file. And sourcing it will literally source the file and make the changes that you add to that config for fish in real time. So it'll reload it. And if you want to make fish your default shell, as I do, you would run the command chsh-s space /usr/bin/fish. Now I install my AUR packages, so paru-S brave-bin. Then I install free download manager, anti-CLI, whoa, anime, anyway, and then molvad-vpn-bin. Those are the only AUR applications that I use, and a handful of those are actually just recommended by the developers anyway. So once again, like I said, vet your packages. Don't just install all willy-nilly from AUR. I recommend against it. Although I will say that if you follow this tutorial, you'll have plenty of restore points to hopefully correct mistakes in that way if you ever run into one. I'd still recommend against it. I'm a Flatpak guy, so you'll see that. Once my AUR apps are installed, I then install some system packages through Pacman. So sudo pacman-S steam, NVIDIA Prime, since I have a hybrid GPU laptop, btop, unrar, 7-zip. Unrar and 7-zip are for RAR files and 7-zip files, of course, allowing me to extract them. So having those packages allows me to do that not only through the system tool for extracting files, but through the terminal as well. Proton tricks, which I need to run the polyversal script to mod Stein's Gate, or Chaos Head Noah, or Chaos Child, or any of them. And then gnome-disk-utility, I recommend as my preferred disk utility, because I've had KDE partition manager literally prevent Arch from booting because it didn't work properly. Wouldn't write changes properly to fstab. And last but not least, for me, Vanilla Arch automatically has Flatpak installed, and you can check your Flatpak remotes by typing in Flatpak remotes. And as you can see, I have FlatHub user, but out of the box, that will be system. So I recommend using the user repo for FlatHub. You can leave the system repo if you want there, and then default to user repo with your commands. But for me, it's just easier to flatpak remote -delete FlatHub, and that will delete the system repo for FlatHub. And then we will flatpak remote -add --user -if -not -exists. Then FlatHub https:// flathub.org/repo/flathub.flatpak repo. And by the way, I will copy and paste this entire thing into the description of the video if it will allow me to, or at least I'll try to do it in chunks maybe in the comments below so you guys can parse this information better. And that second command there, as it says here, adds the FlatHub user repo to Flatpak remotes, whereas command number 1 deletes the FlatHub system repo. And then the Flatpaks that I install, you have the following commands. Since we don't have the system repo, we don't have to specify. But if you keep the system repo, it would be flatpak install --user and then the app name. But since I don't have the system, it only uses user. So for me, it's flatpak install heroic. Then I install Mango HUD. I select option 7, which is for 25 or version 25, which we can actually flatpak install Mango HUD real quick. And you'll see that it will pop up multiple options. So yeah, that's for org free desktop platform 25.08. And that is the same version that Heroic uses while we install that specific. Of course, we don't need to install that. It's already installed. I like to do Proton Plus to manage my Proton utilities. Desktop is my Discord solution. DuckStation for PlayStation 1 ROMs, RPCS3 for PS3, Dolphin emulator for GameCube Wii, Sober, my kids want to play Roblox with me, Prism when I want to play Minecraft with my friends, and Vanilla Arch doesn't have an image viewer or a PDF viewer out of the box. We use WinView for images, and we use Ocular for PDFs. And then we do OBS for recording and streaming. And Ocular will give you 2 options. You want to select just the stable one. There's another option there that is like you got an additional term to it. You'll see, but for me, it's always option number 2. And OBS, you want OBS stable, of course. It will give you a ton of options when you run this command. So make sure you just OBS Studio stable, or however that is listed for you. And you'll know when you see it because it'll kind of stand out against all the other options. But for me, that is option 21. Then I flatpak install GIMP, which I believe is option 16 for me. Kdenlive, upscale for image upscaling. qubittorrent, of course, for peer-to-peer file sharing. And then Tenacity for audio editing. And last but not least, we have all of our apps installed, Yaparu, Pacman, and Flatpak. The last thing that I like to do in a Vanilla Arch install is I will sudo systemctl disable SDDM, and that is because the newest version of KDE Plasma has a new login manager. It's called Plasma Login. It works very well. It looks very nice, whereas a Vanilla Arch SDDM install does not look very good at all. So that sudo systemctl disable SDDM command will just disable SDDM, and then sudo pacman -R lowercase ns SDDM will remove SDDM from the system entirely, and then sudo systemctl enable plasma login will enable plasma login as the login manager, which is what I personally, I kind of wish Arch install would just have that option there, or maybe not force you to pick an option. Maybe you can skip it. I don't remember. But probably a good idea to have one just in case it doesn't automatically configure to use Plasma Login. But that's how we switch to it. And finally, we did make it. I always reboot my system and I do all my stuff. So actually, before I reboot, what I'll do is go through and configure my apps, which there's a lot of that. So like I'll add through Dolphin my directory. I'll make sure that it's using the right GPU in the settings, disable telemetry in the app, set resolution options. Do that for all my emulators. RPCS3, same thing. Set my resolution at 1080p. Add my games. Precompile PPU caches. Make sure my proper GPU set, so on and so forth. Same thing with DuckStation. And then from there, Heroic, I like to create directories. So when you launch Heroic for the first time, it'll create a games folder here and then Heroic. And I like to compartmentalize. So I have an installs folder, which you can set in Heroic your default installation directory, as well as a prefix directory. And this is really good to have because sometimes when you're dealing with Proton and gaming in Linux, you might need access to those prefixes so you can delete them and rebuild them. And then I have launchers here, of course, in case like I want to install battle.net. And then I also create a Heroic folder on my 2 terabyte NVMe USB-C SSD. And I have an installs folder there, itch.io owned and then pirated. I don't use that pirated folder though, I gotta be honest. And let's see, Prism, I will add my instances that I had backed up for 1.19.2 and then the latest version. Proton Plus, I'll use to add Proton Glorious Egg Roll latest and Catchy's Proton latest to Steam, which of course you do have to run Steam at least once before you can add those Proton versions to it. And then Sober, I'll log in there. Graphics, GIMP, I'll configure that to be in light mode and not have like a pop-up at the very beginning. Upscale, I'll set that up. And then of course Brave, Free Download Manager, Moldad, QBitTorrent, Desktop, log into all these, configure them, Kdenlive, same thing, OBS, I'll connect it to the streaming service, I'll change the theme, I'll add sources, all that good stuff, Tenacity. And then there's other apps that will be added in here, of course, and I like to run them just because I don't like the dots and the new next to them. But I do not launch Proton Tricks or Wine-Tricks, and Proton Tricks I could launch, it wouldn't do anything. It would just show me the games that it detects. But if you launch Wine-Tricks, it will enable Wine in your system and like create a prefix for it in your home directory and everything. And I don't use Wine for anything. I use the front ends for everything Proton. So that is something to mind. And as you can see, once all that's done, the last step that I do is I will reboot and I will open up btrfs assistant, I should say. Type in our sudo password, and this is the front end for Snapper that I was telling you about earlier. You click on this little Snapper tab, and you just create by clicking new a snapshot. So I've got my original one that we did to the terminal, post clean install snapshot, and then we've got post config restore point. So I actually messed that up. Change description. So that would be post config. What did I have that set as? Hold on. Install snapshot. So change description. Post config snapshot. Damn. Perfection. And yeah, on clean reboot, I've configured my system. Everything's installed. It's just nice to have. And as you can see here, you've got cleanup number for all of these automatically created ones from application installs, and you've got timeline ones. I believe that all of those auto delete at a certain point as they're created. And then you can post config snapshot and post clean install snapshot do not have a cleanup value, and that is good because we want to keep some persistent snapshots for sure. Just with them. And of course, you can come to Snapper settings and change how many timeline snapshots it takes a day. I'm just going to let it do its thing. I know they're going to delete; they don't take up any space, or at least in my experience. So, and another good rule of thumb is I do like to format my external drive to whatever my root drive is formatted to. So I do have my external drive formatted to RFS as well. And last but not least for the video, I'll show you how I configure KDE itself. So first and foremost, I unpin every application that I don't want on my taskbar, and I pin everything that I do want on my taskbar. I do the same thing here. So secondary apps that I don't use as much go in my favorites. Always nice to have settings right there. I like to set a user image and configure other things. But before we show that, status notifications, you come over here. I like to go and hide the apps here that I don't want to see. So like I like having the trash can shown on relevant. Of course, things like keyboard layout, display configuration, I don't need, so never show disabled, so on and so forth. I like to see my battery life, all that good stuff. And this is what we're left with. Other than that, I will open Dolphin. I'll click these 3 lines here, configure Dolphin, and I like to go on startup my home user directory. I will open the settings applet here, and I will set clicking files or folders to open them. Click apply, mouse and touchpad. I will select my mouse. I will disable pointer acceleration by unchecking this box. Display and monitor were actually good. Nothing needs to be changed here. But maybe if you have multiple displays, I will set a wallpaper by adding it. Of course, I have a multitude of wallpapers that I like, and this is the one that I'm on. I'll add that. I'll set it colors and themes. I like to set a color, so I usually select this right here. Icons, I will get new and install breeze and light. Cursor, I'm leaving as the default, and I won't change anything else there. Then I'll come down here to search, and I like to disable bookmarks, browser history, browser tabs, Plasma Desktop Shell, Software Center, and Web Search words. From there, login screen, I like to configure appearance and select the same image that I have as my desktop wallpaper in my login. Screen locking set to never, of course, because if my computer's on, I'm usually on it. And power management will come over here, and I will set it on AC power to never suspend or do anything like that. Users, of course, set my profile picture. That is Takumi and Remy from Chaos Head Noah. Batshit insane visual novel that I actually really enjoyed, despite the fact that it made me uncomfortable like 100 times. And then, of course, session. I like to start with an empty session. On login, launch apps that were open. If you leave on last logout, it will reload everything that you had open. And I don't like that. So start with an empty session. Good to go. And then I will right click on my audio icon here, configure audio devices, and I will disable every audio device that I don't use. So I pretty much only leave my headset enabled here, but you can always re-enable them. They show. And other than that, I can't really think of too much that I do other than changing like the colors of my terminal. So I'll create a new profile. I'll name it me. I'll set it as the default right here, apply, and then we'll go to appearance, and I'll usually just pick one that I like, a theme. I'll click new, it'll make a copy of it, and I will edit that and make it 30% transparent, so on and so forth. Of course, choose my font for Starship. And that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I customize. Oh yeah, and system monitor, I will also remove my IP from that, which you can just edit page and remove whatever value from anything here that you want to, which is really nice. And let's see. If Lutris would allow me to pull in the outdated version, the new version is broken with hybrid GPU setups, then I would downgrade to that, which I can show you the command for that, just because reading docs, and we'll come over here, Flatpak downgrading. And basically, you would Flatpak remote info -- log flathub, and then ID for Lutris, like net Lutris dot something like that. You can Flatpak list to see, and then Flatpak -- user update -- commit equals commit code. Of course, you would get that from running that command, and then the application. And for Lutris, that command is Flatpak -- user update -- commit equals this string of numbers, and then the application name is net.lutris.lutris with a capital L. But for some reason, that returns a 404 now. So I can't actually do anything with that, which sucks. I'm just not even installing it. Heroic is an amazing launcher. I'll just continue to use that. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I hope you guys found this informative and helpful. I really love Arch. It's the distro that I spend the most time in. Ever since June 2025, when I gave Endeavor another shot, I fell in love with it. I love the package manager. I love how open it is. I love how freeing it is. I love having the absolute minute control that I want over my computer without it being the most complicated thing in the world. And I just have to say that it's been quite liberating as a Linux user of 14 years. Arch like totally shook up how I use my computer. Like I do everything through the terminal now. I have a much deeper understanding of the operating system and all sorts of things that I learned that were cool. And I just really, really enjoy that about it. So, like I said, I hope you found it informative. And of course, if you'd like to help the channel grow, be sure to click the nice shiny button below the video title. Discord will be in the description. Like I said, I'll try to copy and paste that config in there. Or you could just join the Discord and see it in your configs. Up to you. And feel free to stop by one of the gaming Linux streams. We've got some cool stuff that we're going to play. Since I clean installed, I decided to reinstall some of my games. Some of which that I know don't run very well, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we're definitely going to be playing some of these. I want to play through the entirety of Silent Hill 2 Remake again. I'd love to be Jedi Survivor again. I'm gonna finish playing RE5 with my friend at some point. I'll probably play through Resident Evil 9 again once the new NVIDIA driver drops in the AUR repos. And of course, stuff like Silent Hill F, Noida. We play all sorts of games on the channel, all sorts of itch.io games, of course. Because I love just downloading like 50 of them and playing them all on a free night. So until next time, though, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Stay safe out there, and I hope you have a great day/night, wherever it is you reside. Because once again, it's been your friend No Viewers coming at you live from the power of the Cringernet. Hasta luego, as Leon S. Kennedy says. I think it's bingo time.